Welcome, foolish mortals.
Welcome back to my cozy little corner of the internet. I'm Charlie the Vampiric Barbie, your host. And welcome back to another episode of Hollywood History. Today we are talking Tim Burton's Batman from 1989. So, without further ado... The year is 1988, and Batman in spandex hasn't been seen on our TV screens for almost 20 years, but all of that's about to change when a weird and wonderful director going by the name of Tim Burton is given the opportunity to direct a Batman movie, fresh off of Pee-wee's Big Adventure. With a discombobulated soundtrack shared between both Danny Elfman and Prince, we are taken on a crooked action-adventure set somewhere between 1940 and 1988, exploring the heroism of the Batman and the dark side of the Joker. Director Tim Burton was pressured by the studio to cast a big and obvious Hollywood action star in the titular character, and despite wanting to cast an unknown in the role, many of the biggest Hollywood hunks were considered. Mel Gibson, Kevin Costner, Bill Murray, totally a Hollywood hunk, Charlie Sheen, Dennis Quaid and Harrison Ford. James Bond star Pierce Brosnan was also approached by Burton, but he declined as he had no interest in playing a comic book character. So the role penultimately went to Michael Keaton, with thanks to the film's producer John Peters.
You have to recognize that when you're making a movie, that you're in the selling business from the minute the movie gestates, from the minute the movie is announced, from the minute the first comments reach the press, there's an impression about the movie. And when you have a property that's a lightning rod, like Batman, when you begin to cast the picture, everybody has an opinion, because they know what that character meant to them in their youth, or has they read the comic, or when they saw the television show, and they even question whether they should make it. Well, Michael Keaton was a firestorm of activity when he was cast.
Peters recalled Keaton to portray just the right amount of edgy and tormented in the 1988 film Clean and Sober that same year, and Burton took little convincing. After working with Keaton previously on Beetlejuice, he agreed. However, the casting was unpopular amongst comic book fans, and the Warner Brothers offices received almost 50,000 complaints of protest.
Being a big fan of irony, I just think it's great from, sitting back and looking at it all. I just think this is great fun. But no real vindication. It wasn't all that severe, just people saying, except for the hundreds of thousands of people who were protesting in the streets, I guess. And when they hung me in effigy, that was a little, for me, harsh.
But Keaton managed to give us one of the greatest comic book performances of all time, all thanks to the Batsuit. Keaton suffers from claustrophobia, and whilst wearing it, couldn't hear a thing, all helping him to go inwards, introverted. He became truly withdrawn, all ideal scope for the character. And despite the stressful casting of the film's hero, the studio were far more certain on who would play the picture's antagonist. Jack Nicholson was approached by the studio as far back as 1986 whilst filming The Witches of Eastwick, and unlike Keaton, was a popular choice for his role. Once signing on, Jack had what was known as an off-the-clock agreement. His contract specified the hours he would have off from filming each day, as well as days off for the Los Angeles Lakers home games. Nicholson reduced his standard $10 million fee to $6 million in exchange for top billing on all promotional material, and a cut of the film's earnings included associated merchandise. It's reported Nicholson earned in excess of $90 million in remuneration for his participation in the movie, and its earnings with inflation is estimated to be around $143 million.
I was afraid because of my feel of the television series and the way movies tend to be done and talked about. I didn't want this to go through the normal, let's brighten it up for the kids, you know what I mean? I thought this was a very strong, in every way, transitional movie about the genre, and really why they wanted me in there. In other words, on a superficial level at that moment, it gave it, this is not just another cartoon movie.
Jack loved his performance so much, he was watching the film once a week in his house. And despite Nicholson being a firm choice for the role, many names were thrown into the hat for consideration. A weird and wonderful selection, including John Lithgow, David Bowie, Brad Dourif, Tim Curry, Ray Liotta and James Woods. Ray was offered 3 roles in this film. I think it was like Harvey Dent, the Joker and Batman, and he declined it 3 times, All for a really unknown, I've never heard of it, it's such an obscure movie called Goodfellas. It was also said that Robin Williams lobbied hard for the part, the only person, in my opinion, who could have towed Nicholson and really dug his teeth into the Joker. Williams was the only real competition here, but I think being cast in the film it would have had a completely different tone. I read something about Robin Williams to do with Warner Brothers that he didn't want to work with them until they apologised, because they blocked him from being in, I think it was Batman Forever, and he wouldn't work with them until they said sorry. And I think he did a film in like 1997 or something with them after they said sorry. Sean Young was originally set to play Vicky Vale after Kim Basinger was asked, but refused the part unless she was given a monetary offer. But Sean Young was injured in a horse riding accident before filming began. Kim Basinger was then immediately cast in the role, and Michael Gough played the mysterious and trusty butler to the Wayne family. Burton, a fan of his work with Hammer Film Productions from the late 50s onwards. Due to Batmania interest in the film, it prevented Burton from filming Batman entirely on the Warner Brothers backlot in Burbank, California, so the location changed to Pinewood Studios in England. Filming lasted from October 10th, 1988, with 80 days of main shooting and 86 days of second unit shooting. 18 sound stages were used, with 7 stages occupied, including the 51-acre backlot for the Gotham City set, one of the biggest ever built at the studio. Filming was highly secretive, with various problems whilst filming. Burton called it torture and the worst period in his life. The unit publicist was offered and refused 10 grand for the first pictures of Jack as the Joker, and the police were later called when 2 reels of footage, around 20 minutes of film, were stolen. Stressful to say the least, but there's something so special around the buzz of this film, and I really wish I could have been alive to see it, when movie stars were the kings and queens of the world, and everybody wanted to know what they were up to. Naming himself the Logic Freak, Keaton was concerned that Batman's identity would be too easy to uncover, so he even suggested wearing contact lenses, but ultimately Keaton performed Batman's voice in his lower register, becoming a hallmark of the film version of the character.
I'm Batman. I'm Batman.
For the Batman visuals, it's said that costume designer Bob Ringwood studied over 200 comic book issues for inspiration. 28 sculpted latex designs were created, and 25 different cape looks and 6 different heads were made, accumulating a total cost of $250,000.
This is Showbiz Today, live Tuesday, February 28th, 1989.
This time it is to the big screen. Warner Brothers is spending millions to bring millionaire Bruce Wayne and his alter ego to life. Is this a gamble for the studio? Will Batman pay off? Will there be bat hysteria? Sherry Claypool has this bat update.
The crowd started gathering over the weekend in anticipation of a movie premiere so big it had to be held in 2 theaters. By the time the limousines began to arrive, the crowds filled the streets of Westwood Village. Warner Brothers offered a few hundred free tickets to the first hopefuls in line. Despite their get-up, the 36-hour wait at the head of the line was no joke.
We're being squished to death up here instead of being mashed to death back there.
There's no other way of putting it. This evening, Los Angeles has gone bats.
In anticipation, in the months before Batman's released, in June 1989, a popular pop culture phenomenon known as Batmania began, and over $750 million of merchandise was sold that summer. And with a mere budget of $48 million, Batman grossed $2.2 million in late-night previews on June 22, 1989, and then went on to gross $40.49 million in 2,194 theatres on opening weekend. This broke the record held by Steven Spielberg with Indiana Jones and the Last Crusade, which had a 4-day Memorial Weekend gross opening of $37 million the previous month, and Ghostbusters 2, which had a $29.4 million opening the previous weekend. Additionally, this film was Jack Nicholson's highest opening weekend for 14 years until it was dethroned by Anger Management in 2003. This film would also hold the record for being the highest grossing Warner Brothers picture until Twisters surpassed it in 1996. 1989's Batman was also the highest grossing film based on a DC comic book until the release of Nolan's Dark Knight in 2008.